Okay, good morning. It's 10:12 and we will call the Sawyer County Administrative Committee meeting to order. Certification of compliance with open meetings law, Carol?
We comply.
Okay, let's just do a real quick roll call, please.
Tweet Schuman,
Here,
Helen Dennis. Yeah. Dale Schleter.
Yeah.
James Schlender.
Here.
Ron Kinsley.
okay, thank you. Let the record indicate we have a quorum. The meeting agenda has been presented.
Up to the top.
Oh, sure.
Is it on the line?
Okay, there's been a request to move number 12 up to, let's put it right after public comment. Everyone okay with that? Okay, entertain a motion by Mr. Schleter to approve the agenda, moving number 12 up to after public comment. Second by Mr. Kinsley. Any further discussion? If none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, we're at public comment. Is there anyone here that would like to address the board that is not on the agenda? Anybody online, Mike or Carol?
Linda?
And Miss Sherry. Can you hear us, Linda?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay,
Yep, speak up, but please state your name.
Linda Zilmer, Edgewater property owner, and my public comment is with regard to public comment during county board meetings. And I want to comment about a trend that has really kind of frustrated what I think is the role of county government and public participation. I know that the public comment period is not required, and it's not to engage in a conversation for action or debate. But what has been happening is that I will raise public comment about a future agenda item and substantiated questions about process and state statutes. And then when it comes time for that agenda item, Mr. Chairman, you allow conversations between county supervisors and outside counsel. And for instance, last month, they went off on a tangent totally unrelated to the state statute provision I had brought up, and I was not recognized to clarify that. And so when we talk about specific zoning items where you are the final decision makers, I think that is a place where there should be an opportunity for the public to comment. And in this case, the county board, I think, relied on outside counsel answer for something that was unrelated to the timing of your zoning decision issue that I raised. And I know one of your supervisors, Mr. Olson, tried to interject, but again, he was off base. So I guess I would like to ask in the future, when it comes to raising these types of process and questions regarding statutes, that you recognize people so that the board gets the complete answer to the issue raised. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else online? Carol or Mike? Hand up or anything?
Don't see anybody.
All right, moving on then to number 12, second courtroom update, discussion and possible action. And we have John and Sam from Venture Architects on the phone. And this discussion has gone through several committees thus far. CJCC and Public Safety has weighed in. Both came in with the same recommendation. Last night at Public Works, we were in discussion and Tom gave his report on something very new. And Mr. Schlender, this is for you. You don't know about this. But the city, and Tom, you chime in anytime here. The city had come to Tom regarding California Avenue, which is right down here behind Senior Resource Center. Past the garage, maintenance garage. They're requesting an easement from the county to continue that street all the way out to Nyman Avenue. And in discussion with Tom, Tom requested and brought it back to Public Works last night because that's the first he had heard of it. that they might consider giving us Fifth Street, which is right here between here and the sheriff's department, in trade for that easement. That's the discussion one. So then we had Mr. Kane on the phone and everyone at Public Works, including Mr. Kinsley and the rest of the board, decided that would be a very viable option to reduce the liability and the safety of prisoners crossing that public street. So there was a little discussion on actually whether it be scheme 2 or it be another option that would include putting it north of the courthouse right on Fifth Street, correct? Anyone chime in here that?
Yeah, and John Keane and Sam just provided this schematic here this morning, so just a preliminary kind of idea based on that, and it could look like that or something different, but that would be conceptually an idea if Fifth Street could be vacated and we could use that as county property and extend our property on this side of the street and the other side of the street, make it one continuous county property, then we could, extend the building across, which then eliminates the issue with the safety of transporting prisoners. It saves our parking spots that we were concerned about in the parking area. Does take out some free parking, but I think some of the advantages there are really a win-win for the city and the county. So again, city council has not addressed this, strictly an idea at this point. They're going to talk about it at their next meeting, but if it's a viable solution for them, it certainly, I think, opens up some doors on our side as well.
City council is going to meet when then?
Their committee was in the first part of July. I don't recall exactly the date, but it was beginning of July. I think before the next Public Works meeting.
We want to chime in on Public Works decision.
Well, Public Works talked about the different options that we had, which everybody's aware of. And then with this new twist, Public Works talked briefly about it and then decided to table until we got more information. So it's going to be on the agenda for Public Works again in July.
Correct. So, Ms. Dennis.
Do we have a price for this yet or no?
No, and John Kane, can you address what you laid out here and what your thoughts are? We did talk a little bit last night about.
Happy to. Can you hear me?
Go ahead.
Yes.
I will be doing a little echoing in myself, so I'm going to listen. This will be weird. No price at this point. This is strictly a concept and an early concept. I think you'll see that a nice job that Sam has done with the diagram. The red outline is the new construction. So perhaps working from the lower right-hand corner up, we're talking about a secure vestibule, a public hallway that would run east along the side of the circuit court. We're mindful of the windows high in the courtroom, but I think if we can keep that construction to a minimum, we might be able to build it below those windows. So you walk up the hallway, you've got the courtroom on your left. At some point along the way, there would be a secure door that would take you into where the judge's suite and the jury, the salmon and the pink color. The green is a separate and secure area for a prisoner movement. We've got a lot of green in the plan, so I think in a second phase of this diagram, I think we'd be eliminating a lot of the green, but clearly it's providing a direct link from the jail, if you will, all the way not only into the new courtroom, but down a hallway to the existing courtroom. So I think as Tom pointed out, there are just a lot of wonderful win-wins about this. A new courtroom, the three-way separation that we continue to talk about. It certainly perhaps could end up being more expensive than option number 2, but certainly far, far less expensive than option number 3. So it's kind of an option number 3, if you will, using more of the existing building, the courtroom, et cetera.
Okay, Mr. Schlender?
So one of the things that you had us kind of interrogate with the previous proposals was the constructability. How do you rate the constructability of this option?
Well, certainly you can see that we're abutting the existing building on 2 levels or 2 sides. I think the connection on the north is not a problem at all. I think the one to the right, to the east, I think is something that we need to simply look at a little more carefully. So I would not rank it a number 1, but maybe a 2 or a 3.
Do you have, just looking at this right now with the infrastructure construction, we don't know what's up. I mean, I don't know what's under 5th Street. Is that going to be expensive, or is that, what is the, clear this is a premature question. What do you think the cost is for this option?
I don't have a clue at this point. I think we would want to get, some strong consensus that this is worth looking at a little more carefully so that we can sharpen our pencils, get the square footage down to something that's more appropriate. I think we have more space than we need. And then we would reach out to Market and Johnson as we have in the past, and they would help us put some budget information together. My understanding from the utilities in the street is that there may be a water line,
Correct.
but not a sewer line.
Correct.
And I think in that, it would be a conversation talking with the city about how they might be able to assist in relocating or perhaps even abandoning that water line.
Mr. Kinsley?
No, that's just.
You're good, that's what you're saying? Mr. Schlender?
So, Mr. Kane, this is for you, but this is pretty much for everyone else in the room. One of the concerns that we had was the constant kind of reassessing what this plan was going to look like. And I arrived with no intention of participating in the finance committee, but I know that finance was looking at the feasibility of trying to get this something in place for either a referendum or some kind of vote or some kind of budget discussion. How soon can you get a formal recommendation on this new option? And is that something that we can anticipate for the June county board meeting? Because you're going to get, and I say this not to Mr. Kane, but to Mr. Schuman, Mr. Kinsley, myself, and Mr. Paulson, who's not here. There are people who are, county board members are going to get upset with the idea that this seems like we keep pushing this back because we got, and one more thing, and one more thing, and one more thing. And then we end up not doing it. And we've been doing that practice for at least the last probably 2 years, 3 years since we've actually started this endeavor. So Mr. Kane, the question to you is, how long do you think you can put something together? How quickly can you, in line with some of the other excellent recommendations that you had made? And then just to Mr. Schuman, everyone else, this is going to cause some consternation among our colleagues.
When's the county board meeting?
A week from today.
Mr. Haas, one
Next
second, John.
Thursday.
Mr. Haas wants to go.
Keep in mind that the city has not considered this option either, so they're not talking about it till early July, and it may not fly at all, or if it does, it's not gonna happen until July, so just bear that in mind.
How did it come to us if they haven't talked about it?
They haven't talked about it in committee. I spoke with their public works person, John McHugh, who thought that is a viable option. So he brought it to our attention and said he would run it through their council. So I said, well, we've got a meeting, this week. Can I talk about it publicly at this point? So he contacted, their staff just to make them aware that we would be talking about it publicly, but they have not discussed it on their side in a public committee or council.
And in learning of this new information, I am fine with taking any heat regarding postponing this one more month until we know the answer from the city, because this, to me and to other people here, is probably by far the best option. And financially, if it's a little more than what Scheme 2 was, it takes away all that liability and ensures many things that have been concerning. This is a lot of money. I don't want to rush into this decision. We don't get a second judge anyway till 2023. There was discussion in finance about how we would fund this. We've got things moving forward. We have not abandoned this. We are on it. And I just think we're making educated decisions by taking in all these options.
So we're gonna delay this because we have a promise from one of the staff members from the city that this could be an option. I'm just saying that that's gonna be the public interpretation of this, and the heat is gonna come. And it's gonna come from the sources that we asked, and we all spoke to our other sources and says, you know, can you dial down the rhetoric so that we can figure this out? And now we're going to look at an imaginary option that we may or may not actually have ability to actually consider. Just,
Mr. Hoff.
It's not a promise from a person, it's a suggestion. So we're being very careful not to call it a promise or anything else. So if you don't want to pursue it, don't pursue it. I brought it forward because I think it's a viable option. But in order to save time, if this doesn't pan out, you don't have to wait a month to say it doesn't pan out. You can continue considering all the other options that we laid out there. And so then you won't lose any time. If this doesn't pan out, you can still move with whatever direction you want to move in. So I would suggest if you've got issues about the time, you can keep moving without considering this one until we see if this one is working on the city side.
personally, I think this is the
I
best
gotta go
option.
with Mr. Schluter.
Oops, sorry.
He was up.
Yeah, personally, I'll take some heat now in exchange for getting this whole system done properly in the long run. The last thing I want to see happen is we're halfway through construction and somebody says, you know, if you'd have done it this way, you'd save $250,000. Let's give every chance possible to get it done right. And it's okay if we have to start over from scratch, as far as I'm concerned. And again, I'm willing to take that heat. Everybody can deal with it.
Yes, sir.
So I want to be clear that I think this is the best option that has been presented in any form since the onset of this. And while I appreciate everyone saying, well, I'm ready to take the heat, no one wanted to take the heat when the heat was coming on last time, and everyone was upset. My feelings were hurt. We're saying things in public. We're doing all these things, and we're going to reopen that because while we are rationalizing this as prudence and economic sound judgment, it's going to be looking like to the outside that we can't make a decision, and we are looking for every single reason why we can't do that. So we can rationalize it however we want, but the heat is going to come on if we don't make any substantive actions towards some kind of conclusion. And a conclusion could be not to do it, but we need to make a decision. I mean, to sit here and wring our hands and say, I'm worried about the $250,000 here or $250,000 there. This is going to cost $5 million, and it's going to have an operating expense of what, $450,000 every year? Is that?
No.
So I mean, but we're looking at that, right? And that's something we need to take into consideration. We're already at a budget deficit.
Thank you. Ms. Dennis?
And from what I understand, that has changed. You're talking about supportive staff for the second judge. It's my understanding that that has changed now. Tom can get into that, but this is the best option. But if we need to wait, whatever, public safety and the sheriff's department and on and on and on, we decided that Scheme 2 was the best. So right now we can go with Scheme 2 and then wait until we hear about this one. You know, I guess those are my thoughts.
Mr. Kane, you or Sam want to weigh in here at all now?
Absolutely. I think that if I were presenting this to a group of naysayers, as Ms. Dennis indicated, and the committee meetings that I've listened to, notwithstanding the problem with parking, 2 has always been the number one vote. And she just illustrated that, and I heard that last night from a number of board members as well. So what I see this as is perhaps a option 2 prime. It's option 2, just in a different location and in a better location now with new information that was not available last year when we put the different options together. So honestly, I don't see this as being a whole lot different than 2, other than the improvement of saving parking.
Thank you.
Do you want to get into support?
Tom?
Yeah, we had discussion in finance and with regard to the operating costs, you mentioned, you know, the $400,000 number that, you know, originally when the whole court thing came up a couple of years ago, probably almost 3 years ago now, you know, we got into this without any cost projections whatsoever. We just said, we're going to jump into this. Well, then we put together some numbers. What is it going to cost on the operational side? So back in, I forget what year that was, we put together the staffing needs that were assumed at that time, because we just came off a big discussion about we had to have a security officer in the courtroom every minute of the day. So assuming that that request was going to be there, we put another security person in the plan. There was an additional judicial assistant in the plan. There was additional clerk of court staff in the plan. Some of those have been addressed, you know, half a position in clerk of courts, half a position in DA. We've got an additional ADA since that time. So a lot of things have changed, and the assumption and the word we're getting from the court now is that they don't need any more additional staff. We've got Mr. Channing on the line, who's the 10th District Administrator, who also sent an email yesterday reiterating that they could exist with a second circuit court with existing staff. We would still have operational costs, that being, if we're going to build a building, we're going to have to heat it and cool it and clean it and all those other things. So there are still some costs, but it's going to be significantly less than the projection originally put out, which we were waiting to hear what kind of staffing needs they can get by with, like the rest of us have to within the county. And I think it's come full course, and they've identified that they can do the functions as they're doing now without additional staff. And if you want to, you can have Mr. Channing address that a little bit more fully. He did send an email late yesterday afternoon, which I'll forward out to the entire board, but Mr. Channing, to summarize that if it is something you want to hear about.
Sure. Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Channing.
Thank you, Chairman. So to address the staffing concerns and obviously the tailing costs will come with that, in evaluating, you know, the Supreme Court rules, additional staffing is not mandated in those rules when adding on a second branch. So those concerns have been addressed and discussed with all the people that presently work in the circuit court, and also evaluating not only what Sawyer County presently has, but comparing it to other counties. You know, obviously everyone would love to have a security officer in every courtroom, but that is not feasible or realistic. We have counties that have 3 judges and they have 1 security officer. And sometimes that security officer is also then called out onto the street. So that is something that, with having 1 for 2 branches, is very feasible and something that can be done. Everyone is presently obviously already doing the required work. As we had previously discussed, you are getting assistance because you have the need presently to complement your 1 branch. So that amount of work that everyone is having to do is already there, and they're already doing it. And something I didn't mention at finance is that, you know, having a second branch will actually reduce some of the calendaring struggles that presently exist. Not just simply because you would be adding on another courtroom, but because you would have both judges in your county that would be handling your matters. Presently, we have about 4 or 5 additional judges that are coming in and trying to balance their calendars with what is available there in Sawyer County. And that takes a lot of time from the clerk staff to be able to do that. Adding on that second branch will reduce some of that issue and concern. So the work will actually become somewhat more easier to balance as far as the scheduling goes.
Okay, appreciate that, Mr. Channing. All right. Then what I would like from this committee is entertain a motion to come forward with a recommendation from admin for the full county board next week. I really like Mr. Kane's idea of scheme 2 prime. I do like that idea where we could vote to go that way and put it on 5th Street if City Council approves it. Or we would look at scheme 2 the way it sits and the way CJCC and Public Safety recommends. Any thoughts from this committee? Ron?
I think it would stay with the Public Works if you come back to Public Works. I mean, we're talking 1 month. I want to make the best decision we can. And I'm not afraid to wait 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 months if I can make a better decision.
So
At this time, I wouldn't.
you would like it to go back to committee for
That's
July
fine.
and bring it to the July full county board.
What recommendation are you looking from this committee for the full board?
A recommendation similar to what Public Safety did and CJCC did.
So
and Public
option
Works.
2? Option 2?
Oh, it's up to the pleasure of the board. Ms. Dennis?
It's what I just said. Go with option 2, but leave it open once we get either the final approval from the city with the amount. I mean, we're leaving it open, but if that fails, here we are, option 2.
So my question would be, if the recommendation is for, option X prime over Y, isn't there a process for making the steps to get the money to start this? Because it's not like we're going to vote Thursday and then Friday we're going to start putting shovels in the ground and start moving forward. So if there's another factor that needs to be started with this, and while we wait on the option, because Public Works is going to consider, what do you want to consider your committee?
We want to know whether the city is going to allow us to close 5th Street or not.
So that's not contingent upon raising the money to pay for that. That's the application of the funds that would be done. So we need to start separating this and start making the financial decisions and actions that need to justify the completion of the project. And then we can give Public Works and give everyone else an opportunity to pick whether it's 1, 2, A, B, purple doors, green doors, sunroof, no sunroof. I mean, that's a second thing that's going to come later on no matter what we do.
Well, I think what it would do, it would give finance and Public Works a direction to start with. Then they would start putting together, finance would start putting together, right, the debt issue and how much, and Public Works would get into the logistics of how it would be built and what that all contains.
We've already started the process of securing a financial advisor, so we'll issue an RFP for that to get that on board. But that comes after, you identify which option you want to do, then, we need to have that turned into building plans, which then would generate how much it's going to cost, and then we start down that process.
Mr. Schleter.
Yeah, thank you. I'm not sure we need a recommendation from this committee to go to the full board next Thursday. We already have recommendations from CJ, from Public Works and Public Safety. But definitely it needs to be on the agenda for full board discussion. And I think that's the best thing we can do, is have full board construction discussion. and go from there.
Mr. Huff.
Could you repeat the motion that came out of Public Works last evening to send to the board?
Motion to postpone until next meeting. So they just didn't make a decision. They wanted to wait for, decision. They just postponed it 1 month.
So what,
Wasn't there?
what are you postponing? What was postponed?
It was on the agenda to make a decision of what scheme, what plan we want to go with, just like public safety, just like TJC. But we didn't make a decision once we learned of this new option, so we postponed it to have it on the agenda next month.
So what Public Works is reserving was so you're not debating whether or not to build it, you're just debating on what option to build?
At this time, yes.
Correct.
So let the respective committee make its recommendation on the option, and then with Mr. Schluter's recommendation of putting it to the full board, because that's a different vote to raise the money, right? And we don't need the recommendations from the committee on the financial consequences. We need, what, 2/3 vote or 3/5 vote or
3/4.
3/4.
you know?
You issued that.
So that I think is the item that should be on the agenda, and then let Public Works catch up, because Public Works is going to be involved with this intimately in terms of what the construction is going to be. And they should be given that opportunity to vet this, because they have the jurisdiction and the different agencies reporting or entities reporting.
Mr. Kinsley.
The public safety 3 times.
Works. Did I say public safety? Well, you guys can't get CJCC right. I can get Public Works and Safety screwed up.
Mr. Kinsley.
I think I hear what you're saying about getting the financial stuff together to go down that trail. And I believe the finance committee is working on that. And we talked about that today, which options do we want to go? And so I think the wheels are in motion for that. Listening to Mr. Keith this morning, we're not gonna go and get the financing until we're ready to start spending the money, which could be a year or 2 down the road before we actually have to start writing checks for progress. So I think we are in that process.
How long does it take to raise the money? That's the question I'm asking. And when do we have to have the vote to make that decision? Because if there's a vote, say we ask the question, do we have the 13 people or 12 or 13 board members that are ready to make this financial commitment on behalf of the county? You're not going to have any naysayers. You're not going to have anybody else out there except for the ones who are going to complain about the $10 or $15 tax increase on the property. So the property tax, the tax-paying citizen property owners would be the ones that would be raising it, but we're addressing the concern that was identified, which is starting this process. So then we have the construction side, but that's a separate vein, that's a separate path. I mean, we all know that no construction ever goes as planned. There's always some kind of change, but there has to be the commitment about the money, the finances, no buck riders. I mean,
Understand. So Mr. Schluter is recommending we go with no recommendation and just discuss it, committee as a whole, the full committee. Is that Mr. Schluter?
That each committee that has a recommendation should present it to the board, of course.
Yep. Mr. Kane or Sam, you have anything else to add? Otherwise, we'll move on then.
We look forward to continuing to support your efforts at making this happen.
I guess I would ask Mr. Kane that as soon as you get some new information on cost or logistics, that might help us as well.
I don't think he's gonna put together some more costs until he knows if we're gonna use this for or not. So that's in July.
unless we cancel the 4th of July.
All right, is there any further discussion then?
Well, I
Yes.
guess I don't understand, because he made cost estimates for building a separate building across the street without knowing for sure that was going to happen. and the different cost estimates for different parts of the building without knowing that was going to happen. I would think that I'm pretty sure he's capable of making a cost estimate
That's
for
what I was-
building on Fifth Street.
We paid for those services as well.
Ms. Dennis.
I do agree with Bill, even though we did pay for that. We can go ahead and recommend scheme 2, but by then we should have cost for this. Hopefully, by the end of next month, next county board will know if the transfer is gonna happen. And get it done. Everything will be in line. Hopefully.
And I'll just say, for the record, for everyone listening, I agree with Mr. Schluter.
Okay. All right, you got a directive, Mr. King. You good with that, Tom? Just a preliminary cost estimate?
I'll give you a call, John.
That'd be great.
Thank
Are you
you.
done with us? Thank you.
I think we are. Yep. Thank you.
Yeah, bye.
Mr. Jennings going again?
Okay. We'll move on then to number 6, minutes from our previous meeting.
He's muted.
Ms. Dennis? We're on minutes from our previous meeting.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Ms. Dennis to approve as presented.
Yeah.
Mr. Kinsley? Second by Mr. Kinsley. Any further discussion on the meeting minutes? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, number 7. Board policy. Address the board policy regarding virtual attendance at meetings. Mr. Schlender.
So this is coming from public safety, or at least the emphasis is coming from public safety. I have a committee member that it has scheduling conflicts in the morning. And under the current rule, as it says right now, board members are kept at 3 virtual meetings in a year. I would ask that this committee make a recommendation, or we put together a motion for recommendation that cap be lifted. And so that in light of COVID and the idea of Zoom and teleworking and all that, that be no cap for virtual meetings, that be a viable participatory method for committee members and board members for all committees and all things that we have a responsibility to participate.
So that would be number 10 then, Mr. Schlender. Board members cannot attend more than 3 county board meetings per year by this means. Do you have some new language you'd like to?
I would strike number 10.
Okay. Tom, in your opinion, would that allow board members to appear by phone or virtually without a constraint of number of meetings?
That's what I understand the change to be, yes.
Mr. Schlier.
Do we have to strike that now, or would a better option be to suspend it? And then after the COVID, through the duration of the COVID-19 crisis, and after the crisis is over, we will have a history of virtual meetings, and then we can make a decision whether or not to go back to a limit of 3 or to increase it or continue to waive to change it.
Under the current rules, Mr. Van Etten would have exhausted his ability to participate in any more public safety. And because I don't know what his other committee assignments are or his board, but if we're kept at 3 virtual attendance of board meetings, then we're done. Everyone's exhausted it. So suspending it, abolishing it, rewriting it, as long as we can meet the virtual needs of our board members while respecting social distancing and the safety concerns that they have, and then also allowing them to participate without any kind of sanction or penalty, that's what I'm at.
Yeah, and it came up last night again in Public Works too. There was a concern that we continue this because it's hard for them to attend, time constraints and things like that. So is that a motion then, Mr. Splendor, to strike number 10?
Is that,
Move it on to the full county board?
yeah, I would make a motion that we strike Rule 10, Chapter, whatever that is,
Rule 2, meetings and quorums.
Rule 2, Sub 10.
Yep.
Essentially striking the cap on virtual meeting for county board. Striking the cap on virtual participation for county board meetings and everything under the county board component.
Referring to number 10.
Yeah, it's Rule 2, Sub 10.
Got it. Motion by Mr. Schlunder. I guess I would second that for discussion. Mr. Schluter.
I'll support it, but I still, if it was suspended, because that would assure the discussion of that rule after the COVID-19 crisis is over. If we strike it now, it's gone, and in the future, however many months down the road that may be, it could just be forgotten. And maybe we want to, I think we should discuss it at that point in time again, whether or not we want to continue it or not.
Ms. Dennis.
I didn't make the motion or second because this does affect me, and it doesn't have anything to do with COVID-19. It's that I have other commitments, didn't want to be on a certain committee. I was put there because I do such a great job, but I can't.
But you can virtually.
I can by phone.
All right, we got a motion by Mr. Schlender, second by myself to strike number 10
I have a
from
question.
board rules, meetings and quorum. Mr. Tinsley.
No, I've been reading through these rules and I may have missed it, but if that was to happen, you would still have to have a quorum at the meeting, as in, you still have to have at least a minimum of a committee of 5. You still have to at least have 3 of the committee at the meeting in person. Is that in the
Does it
rules?
say that, Tom?
We may want to get that clarified on what being present means in a meeting. We're still under the local order that allows us to appear virtually currently, no matter what the rule says. But I think if you put that into effect, then essentially no supervisor would have to show up to a meeting at all anymore. And, do you want to have that possibility happen? I don't know, just my thoughts.
So I,
Mr. Schlender.
2 things. One is, if it helps Mr. Schluter feel more comfortable, I'm willing to amend to strike to suspend. The second is, there's nothing that compels a county board member out of the county board rules to participate. It's their oath that they took. That to me is the compelling reason. The method of participation is the question. And one of the committee members for public safety is no longer going to be able to attend if he's not allowed to do it virtually by virtue of his job. And when he ran for office, he ran with the idea that he was going to do his civic duty and participate. When the wish list was constructed, the dates and times of the meetings weren't set on there because historically they were able to be set at the time of the first meeting to allow for schedules and different levels of participation, because these are not full-time bread earning positions. These are not volunteer, but these are constitutional responsibilities that we assume as part of their civic duty. So rather than creating obstacles for that participation, I think we should have some flexibility in trying to accommodate, because we do that for other type of different difficulties. I mean, I don't want to point fingers, but I mean, if we were going to require, transportation, if we were gonna require everyone wear a suit, if we were gonna do those are things that we would take into consideration, whether someone could afford it or other type of accommodations. Virtually helps us do that. And I kind of agree with Mr. Schluter's point in terms of striking this kind of erases it. Then if we ever kind of come back into an issue where county board members are not showing up and that somehow is tied to it, then that I'm actually more in support of Mr. Schluter's more I think about this in terms of, developing an accountability component. So suspending it for the interim for a 1-year suspension on this rule so that we can allow for this COVID thing to kind of play out and then allow for board members to participate in committee work, board work and whatever else.
Then you would amend your motion to suspend for 1 year, is that what you're saying?
If that satisfies Mr. Kinsley's question regarding his concerns about this motion.
Okay,
The only other option would be to change meeting times.
Right.
yeah, and you did address that. So I would second the amendment by Mr. Schlender to suspend for 1 year. Number 10.
The amendment. Suspend for 1 year compared to striking it as the. So if we vote on the amendment and then we still vote on the.
No, I'm amending the motion. He's the second on the motion. So we're not amending the motion. We're changing the motion and then changing the second.
Thing I was trying to get.
Mr. Schluter.
Yeah, this makes good objection. I was going to vote for it anyway, if we hadn't got that, but
Can I get that on the record too?
I think it's important, yes.
Yeah.
One of these days we'll have a coup by Alabama. Does that satisfy your concern about, do we need 3 board members physically present?
I guess I have a little more to add to it.
Go ahead, Mr.
So if you're calling in virtue, are you getting paid for that meeting also?
Yes.
Should be, just not.
Yes.
You're participating for the purpose of what
Yes,
it is.
At this point?
I can answer that.
I was told that.
You're getting mileage, of course.
Okay, so we have a motion by Mr. Schlender to suspend. Number 10, meetings and quorum.
Rule 2, subsection 10.
Thank you, sorry. And then a second by myself. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Wonderful. Okay, let me get back to where we were. All right, appreciate it. Number 8, veteran service report.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for hanging with us.
Yeah, no problems. So for May, we had 375 phone calls, 188 letters, emails, and faxes, and 62 office visits. Our compensation, we submitted 39 disability and pension claims to date and received retroactive payment of $171,956.17 for claims decided in the veterans' favor. We went to restart the transportation to the Minneapolis VA Medical Center. And we were all ready to go and the riots kicked off. So they canceled.
So you're the cause of that.
Canceled those
Right. You're
appointments.
wondering who started that.
Yeah, exactly. So they canceled the appointments down there again. And so we have yet to run. But it seems like there's one thing after another. And our vet center guy, who has not been in our building, he did see 41 of our veterans last month for counseling sessions. So that is where we're at. Our training is up to date. Questions on whether we're going to have any training this year. The national CSO organization basically said we're done. And we're waiting everybody to next year. That was the national. The state is a different story. They're still trying to put something together in July, but where we were staying is yet to be able to pick up the phone and start making reservations. Matter of fact, somebody did get through and they said we're not taking anybody. So the state's got an issue right now, our state organization has an issue as far as whether we're going to get any kind of annual recurring training. We've got, training units that are normally expected to be done or accomplished every year. So other than that, we're up to speed on everything.
Can you give us a little update on Memorial Day services? Can you give us a little update on Memorial Day services?
Yes, it went well as far as I know. I didn't hear any complaints. Everybody was doing their social distancing and spacing. There was, for Hayward, there was a small service here at Shoe Pond, and then traveled over to the Greenwood Cemetery where there was yet another service. At that point, people dispersed. As far as I know, there was no issues at the LCO down at the school. It went fine as far as I know. So, and then winter was quite busy. They went to, I want to say, a half a dozen places and presented services all the way up to noon, where the last one was at winter. So the 3 American Legions in the county were busy, and so was AMVETS. Yep, you're welcome.
Appreciate it, Gary. Anything else for Gary? Tom, thank you, sir. Thanks for all you do. All right, moving on to number 9, information technology. Mike?
Good morning. I submitted a written report, and I don't have any comments, but unless there's any questions, I'll take those.
Yes, sir.
So how are we with like some kind of like presentation of class on how to do Zoom? Because we seem to have some glitches that under normal circumstances wouldn't be too bad, but the fact that we've gone live with a meeting in the public forum always seems to add a little extra layer of stress, and wondering if there's something you can do to alleviate that. Or is it just the nature of the business?
Well, I guess if there's always going to be some issues with technology. I mean, Zoom itself has had several documented. Some of it is just us getting to know the system and how to get the participants in, scrambling to mute somebody if necessary.
Is there like a webinar or something that we can take to help people kind of?
Zoom does have free recorded sessions on how to use it, how to do the webinars like we're doing for any of the, there's quite a few of them actually.
Can we link that to the site so that people who want to participate, we can at least say, you can participate, and if you got questions, this is a resource or something else that you can use, because what I'm afraid of is that there are people who want to participate, who are trying to go through Zoom and are not being able to, and then being frustrated, and instead of saying they don't know computers, it's something that we did to stop them from participating. And so I'd like to mitigate that as much as we can without having to drive to their house to teach them how to hit the start button on their computer.
Sure, we can make some links. I think people can participate using plain old telephones. We've already had some success, so we can make those instructional videos and recordings available through our website.
It just helps us so that in case someone starts complaining that I've tried now to 3 times get on public safety and then no one's ever returned my phone call or whatever, and say, well, go to the website. The website has all this information. And that's what I've been doing. But for them to participate with Zoom, we don't have that. And so I don't want to teach them how to use Zoom, but making sure that they have that, they can decide on their own whether they want to be trained in it.
Okay, I'll put something together.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Anything else on Mike's reports? Do you have anything else to say there, Mike? Good. All right, appreciate it. Okay, moving on to the next HR report. She provided a written and she stepped out. Tom, do you want to comment at all on this?
Yeah, if you want to go down to the bottom. I don't know if you have any questions on anything that's on there I can help address. I know that, as positions become open, for whatever reason, we do look at those. We are holding some positions open where we can. We've got budget woes, of course, in 2020 that we're trying to look out for. So we've had meetings with every department about, not only the woes we'll have in 21, but how we handle 2020 and get through with lower revenues than we were expecting. So there are some positions being held open. Currently, I think one in highway, sheriff has got one currently. The CJCC is going to be open. Some of those we're looking at and are trying to address, like the CJCC position, Diane McNeamer, and the loss of Dick Welch. Those were the two people that were kind of instrumental in our programming, not only in the jail, but on this side with drug testing and whatnot. So before we fill those positions, we've had a couple, three meetings so far with the sheriff's department and staff about how are we going to do testing? What does the future look like for the CJCC program? What does that position look like going forward so that we can hire a person, if we are going to hire a person for that? What qualifications and what experience are we looking for? That position previously, Diane did a great job, but spent a lot of time doing the drug testing, not necessarily diversion programs, but a lot of the drug testing. Is that what we want that position to do? Are we testing just for testing's sake, or is it being productive? Is it getting us somewhere? If not, what else are we going to do? We're looking forward to the TAD grant funding, which is every 5 years it comes around. Next year is that cycle. So we need to be prepared on being in position to get some of that grant funding. That's another important component on that program and making it viable. So, it's unfortunate that those two positions are open at this time, but I think it does give us an opportunity to look at what direction not only those positions are going, but what we're doing in the CJCC program. And we've had some initial discussion this past meeting about that. What are we going to do with that program? And does it become more viable if we get a second judge so that they have more time to participate in that program? One of the key people that we lost, our ADA, Aaron Marco, he was instrumental in kind of spearheading some of the ideas and direction that program was in. And so when he went to a different county, it left another hole. So we've been kind of spinning our wheels on what that program could be, should be. But as it relates to the open positions, that's kind of the thought pattern that we're in currently on those issues. So,
Mr. Schleimer?
So if we're nationally dealing with 13 or 20% unemployment, why can't we get anybody to apply for these positions in Sawyer County? I mean, this position's been open for a while, right? But it's not like it's a secret. There must be a spot on our website where job opportunities or employment opportunities.
yeah,
Why is it so hard to get someone to work here?
well,
And I'm saying here, the county, because I have 6 positions open at the college. We can't get anybody to apply for that either.
yeah, the days of, having 100 people apply for a job, we haven't seen that in a long time. We're lucky to get a handful for a lot of the positions. But that's why we're very careful too on making sure what it is we want that person to do before we just do the same old thing that we did the last time. So like the CJC's position is not advertised yet because we don't have, we aren't sure of the position that it's going to be with the job description. So we're reviewing the job description, we're reviewing those kinds of things. And then once it's posted, yeah, we won't get 100 applicants. We'll get 2 or 3 or a handful, and maybe they'll be qualified, maybe they won't. But overall, and when we talk to other counties, I mean, this is part of the problem in the northern counties is getting staff to do the functions that we need to do. It's not that there aren't maybe people to fill them, but a lot of these positions are professional positions that need certain qualifications or certifications, and there are not a lot of those people around. So it's another reason why we really need to protect the staff that we have and make sure that they're compensated fairly for their work, and that we get qualified people, because it's hard to perform the functions we have if we don't have the expertise in some of those positions.
Thank you, Tom. Any questions, concerns regarding the HR report?
That's just like a list of the things that she's doing like on a monthly basis, right?
Yes.
Okay,
And the top portion is just the list of changes that have occurred over the last month, whether they're coming or going.
okay, thank you. All right, county administrative report. Preliminary.
Yes, it does say preliminary because I don't have all the paragraphs, but I did put the ideas down. Just so that I could touch on a few things, on the COVID front. Obviously, we're still meeting twice a week with the public health officer, just to touch base on what direction things are going and how they affect not only the county, but the operation of staff within the building. So we currently still have employees working outside of the building. We're not in a big hurry to bring them back in. At this point, there are some departments that have brought staff back in, which is fine. It's a busy season for some people and it's more efficient for them to be in the building. We're just cautious about, as the fall approaches, already blown by summer, but when the fall approaches, do we see an uptick in cases and what that means? And obviously the concern is if you've got staff working closely together and that somebody in that staff turns positive, you're wiping out a department. So we're still trying to at least stagger workers, if not have some still continue to work off-site. We're still continuing with the virtual meetings, obviously. Good comments on the Zoom. It's been a learning experience, not only setting it up, but getting the public easy access in there. The addition of additional microphones that were installed yesterday helped the public hear what's going on. It was a struggle, and we've got to separate this much with one microphone. So those tweaks that Mike is doing are helping us be better equipped to have these virtual meetings. We've attended a lot of virtual meetings just in our functions now, where we used to either talk on the phone or get together for committees or other functions. A lot of these things are happening by Zoom. So a good portion of my day is spent talking to people like we're seeing here now.
Great question for you. 2 points. One is, Mike, I hope you take the comments not as a criticism, but as a lot of respect. I've dealt with some federal companies and federal agencies with these meetings, and they just crash and just don't work. So the fact that we're able to struggle through this is really a credit to the infrastructure that we have in place, and these modifications don't take it. These are great. You're doing a really good job. I want you to know that. And having to deal with all these different jurisdictions, I've got some experience. Question I have for you, Tom, on the COVID stuff. So are we developing a procedure or a process after we get past the pandemic component? Because I know that if someone tests positive, we know what to do with that person. We remove them, put them in quarantine. But do we have something in place for how the department and how the building is going to function? Like doing I think we're like at green, where you can wear a mask, or social distancing is not as emphasized, but if we went to like a yellow or to an orange or something else, are you developing or have something like that in place so that we can have a way to respond in the future? And I say that because I was on a CDC call 2 weeks ago, and there was an emphasis for doing like a business or operations continuity plan, so that in the event that there's an outbreak, we can say, over the intercom, this is now code red, put your mask on, everyone exit the building, check in at your remote site to make sure that everyone is okay, and then operations continue going forward. But that's a red. Green would be we have no mask, we have no concerns. And do we have something like in between there?
Well, you hit on a couple of different things. The thing about coming over the intercom and getting out of the building, that maybe not a COVID related thing, but we do have plans for that, evacuation plans, which we probably need to review again, because there's probably staff here that haven't gone through that training. But to your point, and COVID related, we're working with the public health officer. She's obviously developing this green, yellow, red scenario. So this is kind of a new iteration and what other counties are kind of getting into, just to kind of have a familiar thing in your mind on what that means. Everyone knows what green, yellow, and red means, but what does it mean related to COVID, and what does that relate to for staff? So currently we're under this green scenario and we've relaxed the masking policy, but when we're in closed meetings like this, or closed meetings, we still are requiring masking of staff and board members in the meetings. But we have relaxed it, so like in the hallways, we don't have to wear masks. So those things are being developed, and I mean, this has been just a crazy learning process as we've gone through, and when we get to the end of it, we'll learn what we should have done. But we're developing, we're developing the policies and procedures as we go along, and we've always said we're kind of flying the airplane while we're building it, because it's all new. Dealing with
We've got a plan. I mean, we has a way to evacuate the whole tribal office by 2 o'clock on Friday.
Mr. Kennedy, I know you got a comment.
Question related to COVID-19. I don't know if you can answer or not. Nursing homes have been locked up. Is there any chance of that being relieved in the future? Do you know anything?
I do not know. That's a question for public health. And so Julia does a lot of things on her end in dealing with businesses and nursing homes and the hospital that I don't get involved too much in. We do have a group, that includes the sheriff and the emergency managers, myself, Tweed, the nurses, and we used to talk every day because things were changing so fast. Now we talk twice a week. And we get updated on some of that stuff, but I'm not aware exactly on the nursing home side where they're at with that. But I think they are still pretty locked down. Obviously, that's a vulnerable population. So
There's also a population that is almost waiting to die, and they're not being able to see anybody in this.
Yeah.
There's 2 sides to it.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Does that answer your question so far?
I reserve my other questions for when I think of it.
All right. So CJCC, we kind of covered that. The court, we've been talking about that in every committee as well. The courtroom options. This new one that we talked about today really comes about because of that California Avenue expansion that allows a traffic pattern that wasn't available before. So that's hopefully a nice thing that can work out for us. We've had meetings with the court too about reopening as far as, the PPE requirements that they'll need, in jury trials and the space needs, because they need to, use more than the courtroom. So we're working through that issue with the court. In Public Works, we talked about what's happening at the airport. There's some possible remodeling of the terminal building. Last year, we went through the process of renegotiating the airport management contract and the FBO, which is the fixed-based operator contract. And so the new fixed-based operators are looking to enhance the terminal building, which I think is a good thing for Sawyer County and the use of the airport. So we saw some preliminary plans, and that'll be funded by the FBO. There will be no county dollars in that remodeling, but it should make that a nicer facility that hasn't been updated in quite a while. And there's also a major taxiway repaving project that we're working through. Down the road, there'll be a runway repaving project, and that'll be certainly more expensive, and that's about 3 or 4 years away yet. I've been getting pictures of the Winter Depot renovation. Have you been by there at all? It looks fabulous from the pictures I've seen. That's been a project that's been out there for years and years and years. And it looks like it's going to be a fabulous building, and hopefully it generates some traffic and economic activity down there, because that it really looks nice. Any other comments? Have you toured it or anything yet?
I haven't seen
Yeah.
myself.
They've the county did allocate some contingency funds, of which they had to tap into a couple $1,000, or actually about $6,000, I believe, And we haven't heard anything more, so I think it's coming along. I think they've probably made it through some of the major things that could have happened. You know, there was some roofing things, some foundation things that they worked through. So I think they're on the home stretch. They were looking to have it completed by the 4th of July to have a celebration, grand opening, but the COVID business going on, I believe they delayed that to August or September date so that they could have September. Okay, right.
I was just wondering if the county was, we paid back all of its funds that it expended.
Yeah, so Mike keeps track of that. So, you know, it was originally funded by a grant that ran through the county. So there's some money that passes through the county. So we're tracking that. There's also a lot of funds from the DNR, especially, you know, when they hit some financial snags, the DNR really stepped up and put in some more funds to make sure that that building gets completed and gets completed in a nice fashion. So that's moving along good, yeah. Time Clock Plus, Rose had that on her report too. That's the timekeeping system, which was kind of put on hold while we dealt with some of the COVID stuff, but there's meetings being picked up on that again now. As with Unicode is the way that we will track our ordinances. Currently, you know, there's ordinances in a big book somewhere, and most of them are online and hopefully updated, but all of that code will be updated, gone through, and put online so that it's easier to access all of our Sawyer County ordinances. That'll be about a year in the making, that project. University is a program that runs through the UW that allows governments to utilize like some student time to get some projects done. So it benefits the students, it benefits the county. There is some cost to the county, but we're looking into that to see if that's a program that would be beneficial to get some of the stuff off our plate that's been on our plate for a while. Just a reminder, the COWS session, which stands for something that I never remember.
County Officials Workshop.
There we go. Those are going on Monday mornings. If you participate live, you can participate and answer questions being board members. And if you miss a session, I believe they're on the website, the WC website as well. Budget stuff, we've beat that to death here so far, but
Well, could you update the finance committee?
Yeah, so
recommendation?
yeah, so in the finance committee, you know, we talked about the 21 budget and starting to plan for that, and we looked at a lot of options in balancing the budget and all of the tools available to us. We looked very deeply in doing a referendum to exceed the levy limit. And we actually had some documents prepared for finance committee about how that looks if we proceeded with that. This morning, we also talked about, before we get to that step, are there still other things in the toolbox that we could do? And one of those being issuing debt to pay for capital items. Historically, this county has not done that except for the jail, but we have not issued debt for other capital items. So we do have capital items still within the operating budget. And so the plan we laid out this morning talked about utilizing debt, which falls outside of the levy limits, to fund those capital items, which would free up operating costs then to pay for some of those operations. So that's an idea that will bring more information to the county board next week, and interesting concepts.
Very.
So other
Do
questions?
we have, Tom, do we have enough capital improvement projects in the amount of debt we'd like to issue to cover the 2020?
Yeah, it would mostly be like highway construction projects. There's some squads, sheriff squads that are still in operating because we buy them every year. So yes, there are capital items in operating that could be moved over. Historically, this county has been very conservative, and for good reason, but it's also kind of lended to the problem where we are now.
and it's an unanticipated problem. The county boards in years prior did a great job providing services at a low tax rate. But then when levy limits came in, we were locked in, at that lower tax rate and not able to keep up with the changes and the mandates that have come down since. So it puts us in a predicament of how do we fund that without issuing debt. And historically, we've done that, but I think we're to the point where we can no longer sustain keeping up with operations and continue to fund capital items through operating levy. That's
And
my
with
story.
That, very good report. Any questions, comments for Tom?
So that's all you're having to deal with?
Those are just the highlights. Yeah.
Wow, all right. Future agenda items. Mr. Kinsley.
We received an email from Mr. Chad this morning, and it states that the state will not fund some of these items potentially going forward if we turn down a second judge. And I think it's time for the county to start saying we're not going to fund some of the state programs now. Put it on the agenda.
You got that, Karen? Note of that, please.
That would what?
That would be nice. Yeah, we get a lot of things that come out of the state budget that are now county expenses, not state expenses, not just court-related stuff, but like highway, bridge stuff. They tweak the rules to put more of the cost down on the county instead of at the state level. So it's a good way for them to balance the state budget, but it puts more pressure on our budgets.
I guess, Carol, I'd like to add the runaway Winnebago costs. And I know it came up at Health and Human Services that we draft a resolution and send it. Why should the state benefit or profit off a mental health facility like that at the expense of the county?
And that's going to come to the county board on next Thursday.
We're gonna try to put it together.
Yes.
But it's a need, I mean, well, as you learned, Dale, we're already 400,000 into Winnebago and 4 months into the year. And we had budgeted what, 175?
Double what we spent last year is what we spent this year. And we could be, with more people going, we're able, it would be $1 million, $1.25 million over budget on that.
We've got a really good.
And I think we've all, I know Mr. Schlender's brought it up when he was in Madison and speaking with our legislatures, and they all say, yeah, but there's been nothing done.
Well, the one I'm most disappointed in is the Counties Association. Because I made requests for information that they said they would get me, and I come back a month later, oh, well, she was on vacation. It's a little frustrating.
Any, Ms. Dennis?
Just another topic. Last night at Public Works, it was decided, motion made and approved by Ron Eichen. You have the open house at the ambulance station on July 4th, right?
That's correct. And we give an alternate date, and Tim was gonna check with Nate at the ambulance to see if that would be acceptable to you.
I just had some concerns. July 4th, a lot of people are taking their last vacations, and maybe that's a good thing, I don't know.
Yeah, I shot a message to Nate too. I haven't heard back yet, but the other concern was, busy weekend. People
Yeah.
blowing their fingers off and stuff.
Well, yeah, I mean, unless we cancel the 4th of July celebrations, isn't the ambulance is going to be committed anyway?
Well, they are canceled in winter. I don't know, I'm assuming up here.
I haven't heard.
I don't.
And then, is it
I don't know,
Yeah,
but I know they are in winter.
being a rookie in the context of the years of service that we've had with these buildings? Do we normally have open house events, and did we do that for anything else, or is we just doing it because it's the ambulance?
Well, and because it took 8 years to get here.
we did it for the airport expansion.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Just wondering, I just want to make it. If you build a courthouse and you have to have an open house, you know, we build under the jail.
They have an open house to do.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, people like to see where their money's
I know
going.
it's packed full of visitors to jail. Geez,
Any other matters for discussion
You
on?
build it, they will come, I guess.
Yes, Mr. Kinsley.
Are these meetings recorded so that people can go back and listen to them? Thank you.
I think, Mike,
Yes.
edit.
Edit, yes, we can, yes.
Okay,
Do we want to?
Well,
I think we should.
yes,
Oh, edit that.
Yes.
yes. All right, we're adjourned. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
John, or
architects.
no, yeah.
Yep.